Hello artists, let's take a look at how we're going to prep our materials to get started drawing. So your materials come just pre-packaged, but we can't just use these right out of the box. When they make charcoal, they actually squeeze it out of a tube, but what we want it to look like is a nice cone shape so that we can shade with it or draw specifically with it. We also want to do the same thing to our Conte, and then we'll take a little bit of a look at our different erasers. So we want to take our charcoal and we're going to take your new blade and you're going to hold it like this. So the mistake some people do is they go like this and they'll be shaving it forever. What we want to do is just real quick start off, and we're just going to take the corners off. So I come through and I want to go about 1/3 of the way back because I want a nice long cone. And I take the corners off and then it's sort of rounded. And so then what we want to do is I want to anchor it with my hand. So my hand is going to sit here. I'm going to put it down like this, and I'm just going to go like this now while I'm spinning it. So while you're spinning it slowly, you're shaving it down about 1/3 of the way. So don't hold it like this. Don't go like this super slow. You're just kind of quickly skimming over it while you spin it. And spin it either way. And you're going to end up with something like this, like a little cone that you're going to want to use too, because now we can shade with it or we can draw with it. And we want to test this out. So let me grab my drawing pad here. To make sure I can draw with this, what I'm going to do is, I know I can draw this way, but can I draw this way? And when you see something like this, these little gaps in it, like that means it's not quite ready. So in your toolbox, you either have one of these little sanders, or you can get some sandpaper from home out of your garage. This is just some 30 grit, it doesn't really matter. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to rub this back and forth while I'm spinning it. So you can see I'm spinning it like this, and I'm just rubbing it back and forth. I could also do it on this just as easily. Doesn't matter what kind of sandpaper. This is the stuff the art store has. This is what you might have in your garage. And now, when I test it, that's much smoother. I see it just a little bit, so let me do just a little more. Oops. Let's do a little more. It looked like I had a little gap in there, so let's go ahead and want to make sure it's right. There we go. So there's no gaps, and now I'll be able to draw. So let's do that again. When you first do this, your very first time, it'll take you like 5 minutes, but after a while, you'll be a pro at it and you can do it in like 30 seconds. So let's recap. We're gonna first hold like this, and I usually do just a little bit of an angle, and I'm just taking the corners off. So you can do this over a trash can or lay down a piece of paper. If you're doing it in the classroom, please lay down some paper and then throw it away. So I'm just taking those round corners off, or I'm rounding the corners off, taking the square corners off. And so when I have kind of this tube shape, now I want it to be a cone. And so now I come back through, I'm anchoring my hand, I put it down like this, and I'm just gonna pull this towards me, about 1/3 of the way back. Nice and easy until I get a cone, and then I know this isn't gonna be, so let's test it out again. So I know this is gonna have some gaps in it, I can already see them. So this one's pretty bad, but no big deal. I just grab my sandpaper and I'm gonna be spinning with my finger while I'm rubbing back and forth. And we'll test it out a couple times. That's getting better. You can still see it's better than that, but it's not as good as this. And we'll make it by doing just a little bit more sanding. So nice and easy. Test it out until you get something almost happy with it. And I think we're pretty good with this. Oh. Even after you do it for a while, you'll sometimes get a couple that'll give you a little trouble. So no big deal. There we go. So again, I want to be able to do precision drawing, and I want to be able to shade. So, you should practice just a little bit with this. So take your charcoal and practice doing like a light line to a dark line, a thin line to a thick line, you know, and just kind of get control of the charcoal. You can do like pages and pages where you're just kind of testing out how you can change the quality of that line. So you should always have at least 2 of these on hand, because inevitably you'll drop one on the floor in the middle of your drawing and it'll seem like a disaster. And so you have one on hand and then you just grab it and then you can sharpen another one later. So that would be your charcoal. The Conte crayons, these guys, they get sharpened the same way. So here's my black and white Conte. I'm going to switch to this table because it's a little cleaner. Same thing, I'm going to be using the same exact technique. So and I want it to look like this. The white Conte actually is a little softer, so we're not going to sharpen it quite so far because it will break easier. So on your charcoal, if you look closely, you'll see one side says charcoal on it and the other side says 6B on it. I like to make sure you can see the 6B. Conte looks really similar to charcoal, only it's a little bit shinier because it has a kind of a clay base to it, and it'll say 2B on it. So that's how you can kind of tell them apart, 6B and 2B, or Conte says Conte on it and the charcoal says charcoal. So I'm going to do the same thing with this that we did with the other, just starting off, taking those corners off. And then I turn it. And you can see once you've done a few thousand of these, it's really pretty easy. You're done in like 30 seconds. When you come to class, you should just refresh these. Make sure you're ready to go. Test it out. Do your sanding. Make sure you're happy with that. There we go. So the difference between these is the charcoal only gets so dark, and then the Conte can get even darker when you push it in. So we start with the charcoal and then we'll graduate to the Conte as we build up our values. So here's that, and then with the white, I would say go back just maybe a quarter instead of a third of the way down. So I'm gonna do the same thing. Take those corners, but just not quite so far, because again, the white Conte is just a little bit softer. So what'll happen is you'll be drawing and it sometimes breaks. Same thing, just spin it while I'm switching my razor blade because it seemed like it was getting a little dull. So I just flipped it, and there we go. So this is just a little shorter, and I'll do the same thing, I'll just sand it. That looks pretty good. So our charcoal looks like this, our black Conte looks like this, and our white Conte, just a little bit less of a long point to it. For our first several weeks of class, all we're going to need is our charcoal, our newsprint, that's what I'm drawing on here, and then our erasers. So let's take a look at erasers for just a moment as well. So if you've had drawing one, you know about erasers and you've used these. If you haven't, what you'll see is your eraser kind of comes in this pack here, and you've got to take off you want to take off the plastic. Sometimes it can be tricky to get it all off. And then some students make the mistake of thinking that this is how you use it, like they come in and they just use this. What you're supposed to do, it's called a kneaded eraser, because you're supposed to, you can break it up, you can use part of it, and you knead it up. So you're going to use it like this, and if I was erasing something, you'll see that it gets dirty, and then all you do is you knead it again until it's clean. And you'll be able to, sometimes I like to use just a little piece of it if I want to get in for some details, or you can use the whole thing. So that's your kneaded eraser, and it should look like this, and eventually it turns black. And you need a new one when you try and knead it and it doesn't have any give, it just breaks. But you can use it when it's pretty blackened, no problem. So don't be afraid to take this out of the pack and really play with it, and it's easier to knead it once it gets warm in your hand. Your other erasers that you'll be using, you can use a white or a pink eraser, and what you're going to see is after a while they're going to look like this. And so then you try and erase and it makes a mark. All you got to do is come in with your razor, slice off a piece, and now it's clean again. So they're going to start off clean, they're going to end up dirty, but we can make them fresh again just by taking a little piece off. So that is materials prep for our first couple weeks. I think you're going to do great. Bring a couple pieces of charcoal ready to go for next class.